President Trump is trying to weaken us so that America can control us. That will never, ever happen. After meeting with the leaders of Canada over the past few months, it's clear it's not for sale. It won't be for sale. The global balance of power is shifting, and most didn't see it coming. In less than a year, Canada, the quiet neighbor everyone thought they knew, has changed the game. The data doesn't lie. U.S. consumers are facing some of the biggest price increases in decades, while major companies like Walmart, Ford, and General Motors scramble to change their strategies. But just across the border, Canada is winning, and winning big. Billions in new investments, a surge in high-tech jobs. Critical minerals and electric vehicle supply chains now flow through Ottawa, not Washington. And here's the result. Canada isn't just keeping up. For the first time in recent history, it's starting to pull ahead, quietly taking control of the supply chains that will power the future. So here's the big question. What's driving Canada's sudden rise to the top of global trade? And how will Donald Trump and the U.S. respond before it's too late? Stick with us as we dive into the biggest trade story of the year, one that could reshape the entire world economy in 2025. While the headlines screamed about tariffs and tech wars, Canada made a quieter move that could change global trade. Deep beneath the frozen hills of Yukon and across Ontario and Quebec's industrial belts, a strategic plan was already in action. Canada isn't just pulling minerals out of the ground, it's building power. Lithium, cobalt, nickel, rare earths. These are more than just industry terms. They're the lifeblood of electric vehicles, smartphones, and next-generation defense systems. And Canada? It's sitting on a treasure chest. Canada still ranks as one of the top nickel producers with over 132,000 metric tons in 2023. Output dipped a bit last year due to cutbacks at Glencore's Raglan and Sudbury mines, but Canada's role in the global battery supply chain remains vital. Ontario led the nation in nickel output, and in late 2024, the Canadian government took a bold step by pledging $10 million to jumpstart rare earths projects in northern Quebec and Labrador. The funding supports new roads and ports, early but crucial moves in Canada's push into global supply chains. And these aren't just mines, they're full-spectrum facilities built to extract, process, and ship high-quality materials straight to world markets. Here's the kicker. The U.S. battery industry can't go it alone. Under the Inflation Reduction Act, EV makers need minerals sourced from free trade partners like Canada to qualify for tax credits. That's making Canadian suppliers a must-have for keeping America's battery boom alive. That gives Ottawa not just leverage, but real veto power over critical supply chains that Washington once thought it owned. While Trump was busy ramping up tariffs, Canada was putting in place the choke points. In a trade war driven by control, whoever owns the bottleneck makes the rules, and right now Canada is tightening the valve. And while Washington debates tariffs and trade wars, Canada is quietly transforming itself into North America's electric vehicle powerhouse. Back in 2023, Canada and Ontario pledged up to 15 billion Canadian dollars to help Stellantis and LG build a giant EV battery plant in Windsor. That massive investment shows Canada's plan to lead the EV supply chain. Around the same time, Volkswagen chose St. Thomas for its gigafactory. Canada raised the stakes with $13 billion in tax credits and a $700 million grant. And these moves weren't one-off. They're part of a broad strategy to make Canada a leader in EV production and innovation. In Quebec, the provincial government is also investing heavily. A $150 million loan went to Ultium Cam, a joint venture between General Motors and POSCO Future M, for a cathode materials plant in Bécancour. Similarly, Solutions Energetiques, Volta Canada received a $150 million loan to build a copper foil facility for EV batteries in Granby, and Canada's moves align perfectly with U.S. policies. Under the Inflation Reduction Act, EVs assembled in North America, especially those with components made in Canada, are eligible for tax credits up to $7,500. That synergy boosts Canada's role as a go-to hub for EV manufacturing, giving companies better access to U.S. buyers while anchoring the supply chain up north. The bottom line, Canada's focused drive to build a solid EV ecosystem, from raw materials to final assembly, is reshaping the auto industry across North America. And while the U.S. focuses on trade spats and tariffs, Canada is pouring energy into strategic investments and smart policies that push its EV sector further ahead. As U.S. companies wrestle with tariffs, they've become more and more reliant on Canada. Retail giants like Costco have already shifted supply chains to sidestep new tariffs. In May 2025, Costco's CEO, Ron Vakris, noted they're moving Kirkland's signature production to local markets, especially Canada. The reason? Cut costs and avoid tariffs. That shift proves how vital Canadian production has become for U.S. companies looking to dodge trade disruptions. And it's not just businesses. In August 2024, the U.S. Department of Defense invested $20 million into a cobalt refinery in Ontario. That's a serious move under the Defense Production Act to secure stable cobalt supplies for EVs and military hardware in the face of Chinese dominance. The Canadian government even added $3.66 million to support this binational plan. This underscores just how critical Canada is to U.S. supply chains. By January 2025, Canada was supplying the U.S. with key minerals like 71% of its potash, 50% of its refined zinc, and 23% of its nickel. Those minerals matter for agriculture, defense, energy, and more, and they highlight Canada's strategic role in U.S. industry. And as America debates trade policies at home, Canada is becoming an indispensable partner. That dynamic reveals the unintended impact of tariffs and the complexity of modern trade ties. And after seeing U.S. companies lean on Canada to ease trade pain, Ottawa is going even bigger and looking global. This isn't just about helping the U.S. anymore. It's about reshaping the map. Canada is going beyond simply absorbing America's trade overflow. It's stepping up as its own powerhouse in global trade. While Washington stays stuck in partisan battles, Ottawa is moving faster. Since 2022, Canada has locked in major free trade agreements across Europe, the Indo-Pacific, and the Americas. USMCA is still key, sure, but Canada has expanded far beyond that. It's already part of the CPTPP and has trade deals with the EU, the UK, South Korea, and ASEAN nations. And these partnerships cover over 1.5 billion people, representing about 66% of the world's GDP. But the real game changer came in November 2022. That's when Ottawa unveiled its $2.3 billion Indo-Pacific strategy, a 5-year plan that's more than diplomacy. This is a serious investment in trade logistics, digital networks, and partnerships across India, Vietnam, Indonesia, and South Korea. It's not window dressing. Canada is creating an economic safety net that reduces its reliance on any single country, including the U.S., and it's already paying off. In March 2025, Canada's exports outside the U.S. jumped nearly 25% in just 1 month, driven by demand in Europe and Asia. That's proof Ottawa's trade pivot is working and picking up speed. And that's more than just spreading out exports. That's a safety plan. With tariffs, delays, and global instability on the rise, Canada is making sure it has options that cut its risks and lock in steady growth. And the difference couldn't be clearer. While the U.S. tries to clean up its own tariff mess, Canada is calling its own shots. Moving ahead with a strategy that proves smart foreign policy is about action, not headlines. Building a new trade bridge between North America and the Pacific. Multinational companies are starting to pay attention. From tech to cars to agriculture, firms are moving their operations to Canada, not for flashy headlines, but for stability. As tensions between the U.S. and China heat up, Canada provides a safer option, less risk, fewer surprises, and easy access to both Europe and Asia. For global businesses, this isn't just clever, it's about survival. The numbers back this up. In 2023, Canada pulled in $50.3 billion in foreign direct investment, a 9% rise from the year before. That made it the 6th biggest FDI destination worldwide. This isn't idle cash, it's strategic relocation. That capital is going into smart warehouses, advanced rail networks, and high-tech logistics routes running from Vancouver all the way to Rotterdam. And it's working. In the last quarter of 2024, Canadian exports to non-U.S. markets jumped 7.4%, while exports to the U.S. grew more slowly. Trade with Europe soared, with an 11.4% rise to the EU and a 14% jump to the UK. These are more than just figures. They point to something deeper. Canada is grabbing market share while the U.S. falls behind. You can see this on the ground too. In Winnipeg, Centerport Canada has grown into North America's largest trimodal inland port, linking rail, road, and air into a seamless route from Asia to the U.S. Midwest. Out west, Nutrien just announced a huge new terminal in the Pacific Northwest to ship potash, a vital agricultural input, due to surging demand from Asia. That May 2025 announcement wasn't just wishful thinking. It was backed by real contracts, real customers, and a global market avoiding political bottlenecks. While America wrestles with the fallout of its tariff policies, Canada is offering a different path, a neutral, stable launchpad, and companies are responding with trade deals, capital, and confidence. So as Washington debates whether its protectionist tactics still work, Ottawa is already 2 steps ahead, quietly positioning itself as the go-to center of global commerce. The sweeping tariffs America introduced in April 2025 have had serious side effects for consumers and industries alike. A Yale Budget Lab study found those tariffs pushed up consumer prices by an average of 2.3%, costing the typical U.S. household around $3,800 per year. That burden falls hardest on low-income families, who spend more of their earnings on necessities. Manufacturing, especially in places like Michigan and Ohio, has also taken a hit. The Institute for Supply Management noted that manufacturing shrank for the 3rd straight month by May, with drops in new orders, production, and jobs. Michigan's auto sector is facing big losses too, with companies like GM and Ford seeing their stock prices tumble and resorting to layoffs. Those problems are forcing multinationals to rethink where they put their money. Canada's stable trade policies and business-friendly environment are looking better every day. This shift could chip away at America's position as a manufacturing powerhouse and worsen its long-term economic outlook. The real question is whether the U.S. will change course to protect its economy, or dig in and risk losing even more ground. While America plays loud public battles over trade, Canada is focused on action, not talk. No trade wars, no last-minute tariff surprises, just steady investments in logistics, infrastructure, new tech, and less red tape. And the results are showing up. In the first quarter of 2025, Canada's economy grew at a 2.2% annual rate, surpassing expectations. According to a Reuters report from May 30th, much of that was driven by exports and U.S. companies purchasing Canadian goods to get around tariffs. Even as the U.S. economy slowed, Canada posted one of the strongest quarters in the G7. And behind the scenes, global capital keeps pouring in. In 2024, Canada's foreign direct investment climbed by 5.5%, reaching over $1.5 trillion by year's end. Investors aren't just buying properties. They're putting money into ports, AI labs, green energy projects, and advanced manufacturing hubs. These are long-term bets built on a stable policy environment. Canada's labor market is keeping pace too. By December 2024, the economy had added 413,000 new jobs, and unemployment had dropped to 6.7%, its lowest rate in over a year. Growth was strongest in green energy, digital logistics, and high-tech manufacturing, the very areas Canada prioritized. And all of this is happening without any grandstanding. No fiery speeches, no public showdowns, just slow, measured policy built for long-term success. While some countries chase attention-grabbing moves, Canada is showing that careful, long-term strategy still works, and global investors are noticing. The question is whether the U.S. will do the same. Since April 2025, the U.S. has doubled down on America first. Trump introduced a new wave of tariffs, some as steep as 50%, on Chinese and European imports, promising to bring factories back and punish unfair trade. The real-world effect? Rising prices for American businesses and consumers. Retailers are feeling the pinch, and exporters face new hurdles to reaching overseas customers. And tariffs aren't the only weapon in Washington's arsenal. Some lawmakers want to renegotiate existing trade deals like USMCA. Others are pushing Buy American clauses and threatening to penalize U.S. companies that move production to Canada or Mexico. Some suggest using the Defense Production Act to force factories back on American soil, especially in microchips and batteries. The Biden administration already tried a version of this with the Chips and Science Act in 2022. Trump and his allies may go even further, but at what price? There's also a growing debate about spending. Canada is moving ahead quickly in AI, green tech, and advanced manufacturing, drawing in foreign investors who want stability. In response, some in Trump's camp have proposed a new federal reshoring innovation fund to jumpstart U.S. production in strategic sectors. But that plan hasn't passed yet, and time is slipping away. Meanwhile, the US is losing ground. In the last quarter of 2024, Canada boosted exports to the EU and UK by more than 11%, while US exporters faced rising trade barriers and retaliatory tariffs. Automakers in Michigan and Ohio are already signaling they may need layoffs and production cuts. By March 2025, Ford was feeling pressure abroad too, especially in Europe, where increasing import costs and shifting supply chains continue to squeeze its margins. They didn't put out exact sales numbers for Europe, but company reports clearly showed a drop compared to the year before. The long-term risk? If the US keeps leaning on protectionism while other countries build partnerships, it might end up isolating itself from the very markets that power its economy. Trade experts warn that a wall of tariffs might feel like defense, but it's also like locking yourself in. And while Washington debates, Canada keeps making deals, drawing in investments, and spreading its influence far beyond North America. It doesn't need to fight. It just keeps offering what global companies want most: stability, good infrastructure, and access to world markets. That raises a tough question for Trump and whoever holds the Oval Office next. Do they double down on tariffs or shift to a smarter, more competitive plan? One thing is certain: if the US doesn't change its game soon, it could wake up to find the center of North American trade has quietly moved north. And by then, Canada won't just be a close partner, it'll be setting the rules. What if the real trade war isn't splashed across the headlines, but just across the northern border? While America stays tied up with tariffs, lawsuits, and political gridlock, Canada is calmly rewriting the playbook. With fewer loud announcements and more smart moves, Ottawa is becoming the new command center of trade on this continent. Not by making noise, but by acting strategically. This isn't a short-term switch. From electric cars to critical minerals to global trade alliances, Canada's strategy is built for the long haul, not a quick win. Meanwhile, America's biggest retailers are already feeling the pinch: slower deliveries, rising prices, and shrinking profits. All because a tariff plan meant to protect might actually be backfiring. So here's the big question. What will Trump or Washington do next? Will they hit back hard to reclaim the spotlight? Or will Canada's steady rise continue bit by bit until it's too late to catch up? One thing's for sure: this story isn't over. Far from it. What do you think America's next move should be? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and let's talk.